Oh yes, Mzansi, welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show. And like we promised, we're about to dive into some incredibly pertinent conversations. And joining us are two creatives who are using film, and that's to tackle a powerful and often ignored issue. We're talking about male survivors of gender-based violence and mental health. Now, we're talking about an incredible short film. It goes by the title Lost Hope, and it dives into the trauma and resilience of men who've gone through a lot, but don't always get the support they need. Now, we are joined by director Norman Leslie and the film's co-writer and actor Earl Hendricks, who drew from his own personal journey to help bring the story to life. Gentlemen, I can't thank you enough for being this morning. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Good, excited to be here and grateful for what I call safe spaces.
Oh yes, this is exactly what this space is, and I can't invite you enough to be vulnerable because I think it really resonates with our audience right now, and I think that's what we are grateful for, is for you sharing your story and your magic with us. Norman, talk to me about this project though, because it didn't just happen overnight, right?
Yeah,
5 years in the making. There's a lot of passion that must go into something like this. What was the real inspiration for you in terms of starting this and seeing it through for 5 years and not giving up?
I think it's basically surrounding yourself with people who have ambition that matches yours. And that's how Earl and myself came together, because he told me about this amazing concept he had going. And originally we were just going to write it and get the production team, but then we just went all out and did it all ourselves.
And you literally went all out, you literally did it all yourselves without even much terms of investment or much of a budget. You dial out what you must, you make a plan and you show up. You did this with a cell phone.
iPhone 13 Pro Max.
No crew whatsoever,
No.
but yet you made a way to create an entire film. Not just a trailer, a whole film, man. How do you get through obstacles like that? Because that's enough to say, listen, man, like put it away, like it's a dream, but nah, it's not gonna happen.
It was stressful, but we really felt that as an important story that has to be told. And that just was our drive. I think, Earl, we had a couple of delays. There was about 2 delays, but every time we said, guys, we've got to do it, we have to do it, and we just recovered again.
And I'm sure there's obviously extra incentive to do this. Earl, you have drawn from some personal experience in terms of what's been put out in this film. That's not an easy thing. I mean, I just think of something like social media and the amount of like vulnerability you have when you put yourself in a place like that. You don't know how it's going to be received. How do you go through that process of putting some personal, real big issues on a film like this for an audience to see?
It was one of the hardest and most challenging experiences of my life, because I'm not only sharing my darkest, most painful moments with a small group around me or on social media, but for a much wider audience to view. And being vulnerable in that space, you open yourself up to potential backlash and criticism. To give you perspective, the first time that I spoke publicly on social media about my childhood rape and my struggles that I endured as an adult and as a teenager, the mental health struggles that came from that, there was one comment in particular that stood out for me. It was a woman that responded to my post, and she said, "Why didn't you fight back?"
Sure.
And for me, it was a case of, how does an 8-year-old boy fight a grown man? And that is what a lot of survivors have to deal with. So there's a lot of stigmas that come from speaking up for all survivors, but particularly for male survivors of gender-based violence, because we grow up in a society where you as a man, especially a man of color, our culture is that we have to be strong.
Yeah.
You have to fight, be a man. How can you let these things happen to you?
And with that being said, Earl, don't you think that it's something, I mean, I resonate with what you're saying in terms of that sort of toxic masculinity that we brought up in. I wasn't encouraged to speak about my issues and my feelings. I wasn't with my friends and talking about things that make me feel depressed. It's, you just keep going, you're here for the good times, and if there's anything that's bothering you as a man, eat concrete, suck it up and move on.
Chin up.
How do you, I mean, for me, that's like the norm growing up. How do you break that norm to then somehow still be able to speak about it, because this is something that I think for any man that had to go through it would never want to share this. You'd keep it a secret till your deathbed and somehow just stay strong amongst it. But the real strength is in doing what you're doing right now and actually opening up and dealing with it. I don't know how you find the strength to do that.
It takes strength to be vulnerable. The thing is, there's too many men dying because they choose to be silent, or because society and the culture that we live in doesn't allow men the safe spaces to speak up and to put their hand up and say, I'm not okay, I need help. I'm here today because of the fact that when I was at my lowest and I was on the edge of that dark abyss that most people don't come back from, and I saw the signs that I've seen other men in my life go through, and then one day you wake up and you get a phone call, this person is gone. A cousin, 2 childhood friends, a high school friend, and another friend of mine, all men, colored men in their 20s, late teens, committed suicide for various reasons, but the common thread is that they were in pain and they didn't feel safe enough to speak up, and I didn't want that for me. And so I put up my hand and I told the people in my life, my family, my friends, I said, I need help. And thank God for the fact that I had these safe spaces. That's why I'm still here. But a lot of men in our communities don't have those safe spaces that I am and so fortunate to have. So speaking, I always say speaking leads to healing. You don't have to suffer in silence.
Hey man, I can't thank you enough for opening up this safe space today and reminding, I think, a lot of gentlemen out there and men and young boys even, that it's okay to
not be okay. It's okay to not be okay.
I love that. Thank you. It's okay to not be okay, but it is also okay to speak about it. And I think asking for help.
There's no shame in asking for help. There's no shame in seeking medical help. I was on medication for a good couple of years, and it literally was one of the contributing factors that saved my life, medication and therapy. And those are 2 things that we don't speak about enough as people of color, because there's a lot of misinformation about those topics.
Now listen, I think this is a great opportunity for us to dive more into this conversation and hopefully assist you, Mzansi, as we bring up an absolutely pertinent conversation. If you're wanting to know more, then obviously these gentlemen are online, but we're talking about Lost Hope, an incredible short film which is bringing up some very, very important issues when it comes to gender-based violence, and especially associated with males. So we've got a part 2 of this, so don't worry, Mzansi, we'll be diving into more of these incredible conversations and keeping this space open for you.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Yes, Mzansi, welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show, and what an incredible start to the morning we've had already, diving into such powerful conversations. And we're going to continue our discussion with the director of the short film Lost Hope, and I'm talking about Norman Leslie and actor Earl Hendricks. Now, this absolutely powerful film explores the impact of abuse, mental health, and violence experienced by men especially. And earlier in our conversation, we were diving into some really, really powerful moments and experiences, which, Earl, I can't thank you enough for sharing in the short film, because I think it really is going to add that sort of gravitas and that real authenticity that a lot of gents, I think, are going to resonate with. You mentioned something earlier about community. And it's something I think we even spoke about off air, how important community is and safe spaces, like we discussed earlier. How is that impacting and how is that positively influencing? And why do we need more of that in order to, let's say, have healthier conversations like this and hopefully deal with our traumas?
So the more we have these conversations, the more it becomes normalized, and people, the silent survivors, will find the courage to speak up, and speaking leads to healing. Safe spaces literally saves lives. Look at me.
Yeah, and an inspiration going on to use an experience like that, and then I think positively serve in such an incredible way. You're not just talking about this community, but you're literally creating it. Norman, you guys are involved in some powerful workshops. visiting schools, I believe, or various factions like that. Talk to me about what this involvement is encompassing.
So we've partnered up with Molo Songololo. They work with child activists, and we've been in Delft for the last month. Every Tuesday of October, we've been in Delft, and that was quite an experience. It's crazy to see how the kids actually engage with it. They're hungry for representation, but they don't have it. And that's been an opening experience, an eye-opening experience.
Yeah, and I think for, like you said earlier, men of color as well, the stigma, the way we brought up, I think it's so cool and it's so like exciting for me to know that there's gents out there as warriors breaking down these paradigms and breaking these molds. Oh, if you could say something to, I think anybody listening right now, and I'm sure there's some gentlemen and young men that are thinking, listen, I don't want to hide this thing inside him anymore, and I also want to talk about it. What advice would you maybe give to them in terms of dealing with the trauma that they might have experienced like yourself and navigating through this sort of process? How do you overcome it?
Speak up. Speak until someone listens to you, whether it's family, friends, your co-workers. There is somebody that is going to give you that space, that shoulder, that ear. There's organizations like Molo Songololo, Childline, Matrix Men, does a lot of amazing work with male survivors. There is spaces to speak up where you will be heard and you will feel seen. So talk until somebody listens.
Hey man, but guys, again, I gotta say thank you absolutely for coming through this morning. I think bringing importance to a conversation that must continue, and it's something that I believe you're opening up the door for. So, Norman, thank you for putting your energy, your love, and your sweat and tears into this for the last 5 years, all for you just sharing your experience so authentically. I think it's something that's going to be powerful beyond measure. I can't wait till it actually releases. When do we get to look forward to this?
Currently, we're only doing screenings, so
Okay.
we haven't published it yet. We'll probably publish it next year around March. Put
Right.
it on YouTube.
But before that, obviously the conversation will carry on
Oh, yeah.
as
Oh,
always.
the conversation's always ongoing.
And I believe we're putting up the SADC helpline on our screens right now. So again, a reminder to anybody out there that is realizing that they've experienced something they need to speak about, and maybe something was highlighted from this conversation, then by all means, you can contact that number right now. Help is waiting for you. Do not be afraid to ask for it. And like you can see right now, a shining example of inspiration of someone that has come through the most incredible trauma, but yet using it for such a powerful and positive impact.
Turn your pain into power. Turn your pain into
I
power.
love that, man. And you're clearly an example of what I think is the sentiment of all heroes don't wear capes. You really are a hero, I think, for our community, for our people, for our brothers, and for men in general. So, again, to both of you, I can't say thank you enough. And I hope that you can continue this conversation in your communities, and reminder to all of us out there to do the exact same. Gents, thank you.
Awesome. Thank
Absolutely
you very much.
appreciate you.
Thank you
putting
so
your heart
much.
out, wearing it on your sleeve, and for that, I'm absolutely grateful. Great conversations, Mzansi, and let's keep this going, please. Yes.